Richard Gray looked up at the monolithic building of the Los Alamos laboratory. Its windows glowed with cold electric light, cutting through the night. Here, in the heart of the Manhattan Project, a weapon was being created that was supposed to end the war. But lately, Richard had been asking himself at what cost. The first strange incident happened 2 weeks ago. One of the technicians, George Hall, disappeared without a trace. The next day, Richard found his notepad near the reactor. The last entry, scrawled in pencil, read, "They're watching." "They're already here." Richard thought it was a joke, but with each passing day, more oddities occurred. One evening, after another test, Richard decided to stay in the lab. The room was silent, interrupted only by the monotonous hum of equipment. He was sitting at his desk, reviewing reports, when he felt something. A faint chill passed through the room, and he instinctively turned around. At the door stood a shadow. It wasn't cast by the light, and it didn't belong to a person. Richard froze. The shadow moved, sliding across the floor, approaching him. It seemed to be studying him. In that moment, he realized it wasn't a hallucination. He abruptly turned on his desk lamp, and the shadow vanished, dissolving into thin air. His heart pounded furiously. Something was wrong in this laboratory. The next day, he tried to discuss what he had seen with his colleagues. But everyone he spoke to either remained silent or dismissed him. Some mentioned stress, others radiation sickness. Only senior engineer Jenkins cracked under pressure and quietly said, "You're not the first to notice. But if you keep digging, you might disappear like Hall. Stay away from the tests." That night marked the beginning of his obsession. Richard began studying reports of missing employees, journals, and camera recordings. With each new fact, the picture grew darker. The shadows appeared most frequently at the test sites. They seemed to emerge from the ground whenever the instruments recorded sudden radiation spikes. Several video recordings confirmed it. These entities existed, but no one but him dared to acknowledge it. One night, Richard ventured into the desert to the site of the last test. He walked across the scorched earth, holding a Geiger counter. When the device started crackling, he knew he was nearing the place where they appeared. Suddenly, the air around him grew heavy. Ahead, at the site of the crater, he saw movement. Shadows. They swirled in a chaotic dance, yet seemed intelligent. Richard stepped closer, careful not to make sudden movements. At one point, one of the shadows noticed him. It froze, like a predator before a leap. Then he heard a voice not human, but deep, resonating directly in his mind. "You shouldn't have come." Richard panicked, stumbling and falling as he fled. But the entities did not follow him. When he returned to the lab, security personnel were waiting for him. "You'd better forget what you saw," one of them said coldly. That was the final straw. Richard realized that no one would stop these experiments. There was only one option left to sabotage them. When preparations began for the next test, which was supposed to open a full-fledged portal, Richard devised a plan. He would infiltrate the main reactor and trigger the system's self-destruction. This would destroy the portal and all the records. The night before his decisive move, he spent writing down his thoughts. "If you're reading this, it means I succeeded. These entities are not meant for our world. They are stronger, smarter, and more terrifying than anything we can imagine. Farewell." The explosion rocked Los Alamos. All records of the incident were destroyed, and Richard Gray's name was erased from history. But in the stillness of the desert night, one can sometimes hear a whisper, like an echo of distant shadows, waiting for their time.